Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about human rights and government policy. Welcome back to Policy and Rights here on Depictions Media Radio, and I am Michael, your host, and there's been a lot of talk about, of course, about environment, a lot of talk about COVID-19, a lot of talk about affordable housing, the economy, and what to do about it, how to fix the problems at hand, how to deal with things so that we all get what we need and everything come out on top. Of course, we know, we've seen it, that the liberal and the conservative parties, they want to continue digging up carbon out of the ground, and they're continuing to give subsidies to the large corporations that would do so. The NDP is saying that they want to take those subsidies away from the oil and gas companies, the large corporations, and they want to revert it back into something that would be given back to the middle class, those who work so hard for our country to be what it is. And we've heard some similar things come out of the Green Party, where Anna May Paul talked about how Alberta is a prime example of how, if funding was used the right way, that they could retrain those who are working in the oil sands so that Alberta could be a leader in green energy and renewable energies. So there's a lot of talk about this sort of thing. There's a lot of talk about affordable housing. You're going to hear later on that the Green Party candidate, Felix Conway, is going to tell us about how high the rent is in Surrey, BC, that if you're a younger family, you probably can't afford to even rent an appropriate size apartment for two adults and a child. Things are off the rails. Along with that, it's like as you listen to the show, you're going to hear about British Columbia and the new vaccine card. Well, British Columbia isn't the first one to do this. There have been other provinces across the country that have come up with this vaccine card. This card that you have to carry around with you before you can go into a restaurant, before you can buy a ticket to a show or a movie, before you can do a lot of things. You have to present this vaccine card. The last time we all looked, wasn't being vaccinated a personal decision, something that shouldn't have been displayed to the knowing public? It isn't an exclusive club membership. It's something that you decided to do because you thought it was the right thing to do. Rather that's how you feel about it or not. Rather, for those anti-vaxxers out there that may not believe that the vaccine is effective enough yet. They may not believe in the data that's being presented because we haven't been presented with transparent data. But the fact that we are now being mandated that we have to get a vaccination or else we can't travel, or else we can't do a lot of things because we don't have the proper vaccination card. We have to remember who is actually backing a lot of these. Which party decided that, hey, we know we'll go across the country and present that if you come on board with us, that we will give you federal money towards a vaccination program, a vaccination ID program. We've heard several times how Anime Paul believes that we need to reduce our carbon footprint. We've heard a lot about reducing our carbon footprint through all the candidates. But if we look, 3 out of the 4 parties running for these federal offices have jets that they're flying all over the country, and yet they talk about reducing their carbon footprint. We need to examine these things as voters. We need to examine what it is these programs that are being put in front of us and how good they really are for our country. How they are for our democracy. Do they represent democracy? Do they represent something else other than democracy with mandates to have things injected into you? Do they represent the ultra-rich with jets flying across the sky? Who paid for those jets? Who paid for the fuel? What special interest group funded these things? Which party didn't accept the money from the special interest group? Because it didn't match their values. We need to pay close attention to everything we see in front of us and not just listen to what is being said to us. Remember this, because the early voting session starts September 10th. And we have until September 20th to decide. So pay attention to what is being put in front of you. Pay attention very closely and decide for your own lives very wisely. Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio.
Good morning. Access to reliable and affordable cell phone and internet service is essential to our everyday lives. Yet Canadians continue to pay some of the highest prices in the entire world for our cell phone and internet access. L'accès à des services de téléphonie cellulaire et d'Internet est essentiel, surtout des services fiables et abordables. Pourtant, les Canadiens paient toujours plus que les autres. With inflation rising, families are struggling to make ends meet. Justin Trudeau still hasn't delivered on his commitment to give Canadians a break on their cell phone bills. And there are still communities that don't have access to high-speed internet because Mr. Trudeau has been so slow bringing high speed to more of the country. With Canada's recovery plan, we have a plan to lower cell phone and internet bills for Canadians. Avec le plan de rétablissement du Canada, on va réduire les facteurs de téléphonie cellulaire et d'Internet. A big reason for high cell phone bills is a lack of competition. We need more players in the Canadian market to help improve wireless choice and affordability for consumers. But Canada currently bans foreign companies from competing here, leaving Canadians with limited choice and higher prices. Canada's Conservatives will allow foreign companies from places like Europe and the United States to offer cell phone and internet service here. We'll let in companies from countries that allow our companies to compete in their markets. Un gouvernement conservateur va permettre aux entreprises de l'Europe et des États-Unis d'offrir des services de téléphonie cellulaire et d'Internet au Canada. Et on va permettre à nos entreprises de faire concurrence sur les marchés étrangers. This will mean more choice and lower prices for Canadians and help ensure that all Canadians have access to high-speed Internet service. Let me also be very clear. Canada's Conservatives will stand up to corporate Canada and reject mergers that substantially reduce competition and lead to layoffs and higher prices. And we will help lower prices by ensuring that local and regional players have access to the spectrum they need. Je vais être très clair. Les conservateurs vont tenir tête aux grandes entreprises canadiennes. On va refuser les fusions qui réduisent la concurrence, qui entraînent des mises à pied et qui augmentent les prix. Pour réduire les prix, on va s'assurer que les fournisseurs locaux et régionaux ont accès au spectre dont ils ont besoin. To help Canadians living outside our big cities, we'll also connect all of Canada to high-speed internet by 2025. Justin Trudeau's current federal target won't deliver universal high-speed internet until 2030. Canadians can't wait 9 more years. Pour aider les Canadiens qui vivent en milieu rural, on va connecter tout le Canada à Internet haute vitesse d'ici 2025. Mais avec Justin Trudeau, les Canadiens vont devoir attendre. Le chef libéral planifiait de connecter le Canada uniquement en 2030. Les Canadiens n'en peuvent plus d'attendre. Encore moins une autre 9 ans de plus. Canada's Conservatives will always put the interests of Canadian consumers first. We will deliver more competition, more reliability, and more affordable options for families and businesses. Canada's Conservatives are the only choice to secure the future and ensure affordable cell phone and Internet service for you and your family. Seuls les conservateurs vont offrir des services de téléphonie cellulaire et d'Internet abordables. Seuls les conservateurs vont agir pour l'avenir. Together, we will secure the future for Canadian families. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
We will now be taking questions. Allons maintenant prendre les questions. First question.
Glenn McGregor, CTV News. Mr. O'Toole, you spent more time in this room on this election campaign than anywhere else in the country, and you've been insulated from the kind of scenes that we saw confront the Liberal campaign last night in London. But when you do go out, we don't see those kinds of scenes at your campaign. What is it you think about Mr. Trudeau that attracts that kind of anger, now even violence, people throwing gravel at him, that you don't?
Well, let me repeat what I've said. It's completely unacceptable to see harassment of political figures, of media. We live in a great democracy, and let's act like we do. We can debate our ideas. I don't agree with the fact we're even having an election. I don't agree with Mr. Trudeau's approach on many things, but I respect his ability to be able to communicate with Canadians free of harassment, intimidation, and violence, and for our media to report on that. And we should remember the country we are, which is a great democracy, that we need to have an election that reflects that. We're trying to run in a pandemic election as safe of a campaign as possible. That's why we use our studio to talk about our recovery plan in person, in the studio, every day in a way that's safe and positive. C'est totalement inacceptable de voir l'harcèlement des candidats, des chefs de médias. Nous habitons dans une démocratie et on doit avoir un débat sur les idées pour notre avenir. Et pour moi, comme un chef dans une élection en pleine d'une pandémie, on doit utiliser notre studio, on doit avoir des événements sécuritaires parce que c'est très important de parler sur ma vision et notre plan pour le rétablissement du Canada, mais dans une manière sécuritaire dans une pandémie.
Yesterday you spoke about an approach of respect to people who have different opinions about vaccination. Having seen those pictures from last night and from the days previous, people yelling racist remarks, misogynistic remarks at supporters at Mr. Trudeau's events, do you really feel that way, that people should respect those opinions?
I think we have to get as many people in this country vaccinated as possible. That's why every day, for the last year, I've talked about the need to have a steady supply of vaccines. Vaccines are safe and effective for use. And if people do have any questions, let's answer those questions and get people vaccinated. We have a target to try and get to 90% to get close to herd immunity so we can turn the page on COVID-19. I think that's what everyone wants. And let me reiterate, there is never an excuse to intimidate people, to promote violence, or to harass people, when in Canada we should have a healthy debate about the future of our country. That type of conduct is unacceptable towards anyone. So we're trying to run a positive campaign based on our plan, based on providing a roadmap to being better prepared for a pandemic in the future, and we're trying to conduct ourselves in a positive way and professional at every step.
Next question.
David Aiken, Global News. Good morning, Mr. O'Toole. You know, this may be our last chance to talk to you before we get into these debates, and I was kind of hoping, I think like many voters, we'd see some costs in your platform, a specific line-by-line item of the costs. I understand you were asked about this earlier, and you had some thinking about the PBO we're waiting on, but as you perfectly well know, you do not need to wait for the PBO to tell Canadians how much, for example, you're going to spend on rural broadband and everything else in your platform. So can you tell us what's the total bill for the spending? What's the total revenue that you're going to have in your platform? And when will we see that? When will you amend your platform one more time?
Well, thanks, David. We launched our plan, Canada's Recovery Plan, on the first full day of this campaign. We think Canadians deserve a plan to get the country back on its feet, for jobs, for accountability, for leadership on mental health, for being more prepared in the future, and for getting back to balance over the course of the next decade. That is our commitment. We are making some spending priorities in a record way for our public healthcare system, for mental health, for addiction. But we're also going to get spending under control because the cost of living crisis families are facing is fueled in part by Mr. Trudeau's out-of-control spending. And when we launched our plan, we said we would have an update from the Parliamentary Budget Officer. We will have that, I hope, shortly. And that was a process that Mr. Trudeau set up. We could not access the PBO until the campaign began. We will update Canada's recovery plan as soon as we get that confirmation.
Okay, so that PBO excuse is like, sorry, the cat ate my homework kind of stuff. You perfectly well know you don't need the PBO to present a costing platform. We've had lots of elections without a PBO, and parties present the costs of their platform. Let me pick up on one more thing you just said. You said you're going to have balanced budget in the decade. Your platform talks assuming 3% growth. Where did that come from? Can you tell us who is telling you that this country is going to average 3% economic growth? Because I don't know of an economist that does. And can we speak to that economist who gave you that number?
We have a very ambitious plan to get our country back on its feet, David. We are supporting people getting back to work in all sectors of the economy. We don't want to transition entire parts of our country, as Mr. Trudeau and Mr. Singh do. We want to help the highly affected sectors like hospitality, restaurants, travel, tourism that we've been advocating for a year that couldn't even get specific plans from Mr. Trudeau, who's just been kicking the can down the road with the same programs that were set up at the first wave, yet Mr. Trudeau didn't learn any of the lessons by the third wave. We're going to get this country working, and I am glad we have ambition to have a strong economy. We need a strong economy to tackle climate change, to tackle inequalities, to walk the path of reconciliation. And so we have an ambitious plan, but we know we can attain our targets, and our balanced budget approach will be disciplined over a period of time so that we can help people in the short term, get our economy on a solid footing, and then get Mr. Trudeau's reckless spending under control.
Prochaine question.
Bonjour, Monsieur O'Toole, Louis Blouin de Radio-Canada. Les maires des grandes villes québécoises s'inquiètent du flou sur votre position concernant les armes à feu. La mairesse de Montréal est préoccupée de voir les armes utilisées, par exemple, dans les drames de Polytechnique, du Collège Dawson, de les voir revenir éventuellement sur le marché. Pourquoi est-ce que vous gardez la porte ouverte à ce que ces armes-là soient de nouveau autorisées?
Comme j'ai dit, je vais maintenir les restrictions sur les armes à feu en place et avoir un processus transparent sur notre système de classification. Et je vais travailler en étroite collaboration avec la mairesse, toutes les municipalités, les provinces contre les gangs de rue et le contrebande. C'est le problème à Montréal, à Vancouver, assurée. Et c'est après 6 ans d'inaction sur la frontière avec M. Trudeau, sans action avec nos policiers dans les grandes villes, on doit cibler les gangs de rue et cibler nos investissements sur la contrebande. On va corriger la situation avec la contrebande. As I've said, we will maintain restrictions on firearms in place and launch a public and transparent process for our classification system to take out the politics. But I look to partner with our big city mayors who have been struggling with a rising street gang and organized crime with brazen shootings from Montreal to Vancouver to Surrey, largely driven by illegally smuggled firearms from the United States. That problem has gotten worse under Mr. Trudeau. We're going to work with police, work with mayors, work with provinces to tackle this smuggling issue and to give the tools needed to stop these brazen gang shootings.
Sur un autre sujet, un conseil scolaire francophone catholique en Ontario a décidé de se débarrasser de 5000 livres, dont des bandes dessinées de Tintin et d'Astérix, parce qu'ils propageaient des stéréotypes sur les Autochtones. Je veux savoir, qu'est-ce que vous pensez de cette décision-là?
La réconciliation est importante pour tous les Canadiens et Canadiennes et on doit avoir un système d'éducation sans discrimination. C'est un sujet important pour moi comme chef, la réconciliation, et on doit avoir une tolérance zéro pour la discrimination.
Good morning, Mr. O'Toole. Stephanie Taylor with the Canadian Press. You said yesterday you're not going to prejudge the outcome of a firearm classification review. So if you're leaving the door open for once again legalizing guns like the AR-15, isn't the footnote in your platform disingenuous?
I want all Canadians to know that public safety is a priority for me as a potential Prime Minister, but as a father of kids in the suburbs. We want to see safe communities across this country. And to do that, we're going to make sure that we give police and law enforcement officials at the border the tools to keep the illegal smuggling of weapons out of our country. That has driven an increase in some of these violent crimes in recent years under Mr. Trudeau. We will maintain restrictions on firearms in place and launch a public and transparent review to make sure we take the politics out of decisions related to public safety. But I've been very clear, public safety is critical, and these shootings in our cities that police need additional tools to fight against, our Canada Recovery Plan will give them the tools to tackle this issue.
With respect, Mr. O'Toole, you didn't answer the question and you haven't been clear. You say the restrictions will stay in place. Will those restrictions stay in place on a permanent basis under a Conservative government, or will they only be temporary until you do this review?
As I've said, the restrictions will remain in place. The assault weapon ban and the Order in Council provisions from 2020. We are going to have an independent and public review of our classification system because sadly, it has been used to divide Canadians and mislead Canadians. Mr. Trudeau has been importing this type of American politics literally every week of this campaign, manipulating video, misleading people, and importing these type of divisive debates from the United States. That's why I want to have a public and transparent process so that we can take that sort of us versus them approach out of questions related to public safety.
Next question.
Good morning, Mr. O'Toole. John Ibbotson, Globe and Mail. Did your campaign director, Fred Delory, who once represented the gun lobby, recuse himself from the development of your party's gun policies in the same manner that Dan Mader did on the gig economy platform proposal?
Yes. And in fact, for many years, I've said we have to have an approach on public safety that focuses on where the issue is, which is this criminal smuggling issue. We have to actually work with CBSA and border officials in the United States to stop this, not just at the border, but before it happens. And I've said for many years, for issues like public safety, we have to take the divisive politics out of these discussions. We have to focus on keeping Canadians safe, having a transparent process for the screening, the training, and the licensing that goes behind our classification process for farmers and hunters who are not the problem with public safety. We see the problem is street gangs, criminal organization using those firearms that are smuggled in from the United States. On doit avoir une approche sur notre système de classification transparent, sans politique. C'est très important d'enlever les politiques de style américain dans notre discussion sur la sécurité publique. Et notre plan, on a un plan indépendant basé sur mes idées sur la sécurité publique et un processus transparent sur le système de classification.
Prochaine question.
Bonjour, M. O'Toole, Boris Proulx du journal Le Devoir. On a vu beaucoup de pancartes ou de panneaux du Parti populaire du Canada de Maxime Bernier lors de manifestations contre le chef libéral Justin Trudeau. On vous entend pas beaucoup critiquer Maxime Bernier ou critiquer le Parti populaire du Canada, donc j'aimerais savoir si vous avez une réflexion sur le type de politique ou leur façon de faire campagne.
Comme j'ai dit, l'harcèlement et les manifestations violentes contre les autres chefs ou contre les médias sont totalement inacceptables par les partisans de notre parti ou des manifestants seuls. C'est très important d'avoir un débat sensible et respectueux dans une élection, dans une démocratie comme le Canada.
En suivi, vous avez dit tout à l'heure qu'un gouvernement conservateur va se tenir debout contre les grandes entreprises. J'aimerais savoir si vous avez une réflexion sur le gouvernement Harper, qui était au pouvoir évidemment jusqu'en 2015. Est-ce que le précédent gouvernement de Stephen Harper se tenait debout suffisamment contre les grandes entreprises, notamment pour la question des grandes télécoms?
Je suis un nouveau chef avec une nouvelle approche sur la concurrence et c'est très important pour moi d'avoir plus de concurrence parce que ça va créer une diminution des prix pour les consommateurs. Et c'est pourquoi je vais arrêter les fusions entre les grandes entreprises si c'est mauvais pour les consommateurs. Plus de concurrence est excellent pour notre pays. En pleine d'une crise du coût de la vie maintenant, et on a des politiques sur l'engagement, sur les facteurs d'aider les Canadiens et impose pour la TPS en décembre, les Canadiens et les Canadiennes méritent un break.
Next question.
Hi, Mr. O'Toole. David Cochran with CBC News. I have a question on guns, and I have to ask about Mr. Delory's role as a lobbyist for the National Firearm Association and past discussions about building a political machine to flip marginal Liberal seats and now playing a senior role in this campaign and your leadership. And your past comments when seeking the leadership were on rolling back gun restrictions were far more what the gun lobby wanted to see than the shifting answers of this past week. So how should Canadians view Mr. Delory's past connections and now senior role in your campaign, your shifting positions on this over the years, and will you maintain the ban on the semi-automatic assault rifles from 2020 even after the review process is complete?
Well, David, let me be clear. I will maintain the restrictions in place and have a public and transparent system to review classification. Probably the most consistent comment I've had on this subject over the last number of years is the need to take the politics out of it. We need a fact-driven and a science-driven independent process so that people aren't divided over a subject of public safety and security. In fact, it's been troubling to see Mr. Trudeau use the tragedy in Nova Scotia to suggest that that was because of law-abiding people. Let's actually get the public inquiry rolling, which he tried to prevent, because in that situation, the crime was perpetrated by someone who obtained firearms illegally. We need to tackle that issue and stop using the politics to divide people. Let's put the investments to police, to the border, to tackle the real issue that we're seeing lead to rising violent crime rates under Mr. Trudeau's watch. Let's not divide. Let's focus on public safety and security, and that will be my approach.
Next question.
Good morning, Mr. O'Toole. JP Tasker from CBC News. Justin Trudeau said yesterday you're beholden to the far-right anti-vax wing of your party when it comes to vaccine mandates. Given what he said about that, will you commit today to appointing a health minister who has been fully vaccinated? You've been asked this question before. We'd like a clear answer on this today. A health minister who's fully vaccinated. Will you commit to that today?
Yes. And here is something Mr. Trudeau seems to forget. I've been advocating for vaccines for over a year. In fact, I was very critical in Mr. Trudeau's decision to partner with a state-owned Chinese enterprise to give vaccines to Canadians. It's why we were 4 months late. It's why we were behind a lot of other countries. It's why, with myself and my wife having COVID ourselves, we publicized our vaccination process through a video. Mr. Trudeau praised that at the time, that we were being so public promoting vaccines. It's been very, very disappointing to see every week in this campaign Mr. Trudeau misleading people and saying whatever he wants to say to try and get reelected. We should not be doing that in a pandemic election that he called for his own self-interest. So the answer to that question is yes, and I hope he stops trying to divide people over a question related to health.
Ce sera la dernière question. This will be the last question.
Bonjour, M. O'Toole. Vincent Gosselin du 92.5 Saguenay. J'aimerais revenir sur le Conseil scolaire de l'Ontario qui s'est débarrassé de 5000 livres. Vous avez parlé de réconciliation. Vous avez dit qu'on doit avoir un système d'éducation sans discrimination. Mais selon vous, à votre avis, est-ce qu'il s'agit de la censure, ce qui s'est produit?
La réconciliation est primordiale pour notre société. C'est pourquoi c'était ma première question de la Chambre des communes comme chef de l'opposition. Et c'est possible d'enlever les livres et les bandes dessinées sans les brûler, mais on doit avoir une approche de respect sur les questions sur la réconciliation et notre histoire.
Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio.
Bonjour, mon nom est Stephen Guilbeault. Je suis candidat libéral dans la très belle circonscription de Laurier-Sainte-Marie, juste à côté, mais très heureux de vous recevoir dans une autre très belle circonscription, celle de ma collègue Soraya Martinez dans Schlager. On est ici ce matin pour parler de logement notamment, mais aussi d'environnement. Et je suis très fier et très heureux de faire partie du premier gouvernement dans l'histoire du pays qui s'est doté d'une stratégie nationale du logement accompagnée d'investissements records, à la fois pour le logement abordable, mais aussi pour le logement social. Et quand je vous parle de logement social, je sais très bien de quoi je parle. Je suis moi-même membre fondateur d'une coopérative d'habitation qui est dans la très belle circonscription de Rosemont, la Petite Patrie. Alors, j'ai travaillé sur cette question-là pendant des années et lorsque je le faisais, je rêvais d'avoir un gouvernement fédéral qui serait partenaire d'organisations citoyennes comme la mienne à l'époque pour faire ce genre de projet-là. Hélas, le gouvernement fédéral de Stephen Harper n'avait aucun intérêt pour ces questions à l'époque. Il a fallu attendre l'arrivée du gouvernement de Justin Trudeau en 2015 pour qu'on voit commencer à se développer l'implication du gouvernement fédéral en partenariat avec les provinces, avec les municipalités. Parlant de première, aussi très fier de faire partie du premier gouvernement dans l'histoire du Canada qui s'est doté d'un plan de lutte au changement climatique, non seulement pour atteindre et dépasser les objectifs que le Canada s'était fixés lors de la conférence de Paris. Premier gouvernement à se doter d'un prix carbone que nous avons dû défendre jusqu'en Cour suprême parce que des provinces comme l'Ontario, l'Alberta et hélas même le Québec essayaient de nous empêcher de mettre de l'avant. Mais nous ne sommes pas arrêtés là. Nous avons fait des propositions dans le cadre de cette campagne qui sont très, très, très avant-gardistes. Par exemple, de plafonner les émissions de gaz à effet de serre du secteur du pétrole et du gaz, de devancer de 2 ans l'entente du G20 d'éliminer les subventions aux combustibles fossiles. Donc, cette entente prévoit que les subventions seront éliminées d'ici 2025 dans les pays du G20. Nous avons décidé qu'au Canada, ce serait 2023. Notre plan de lutte au changement climatique est tellement solide que la semaine dernière, un professeur de l'Université Simon Fraser, membre du GIEC, nous a donné la note de 8 sur 10, la meilleure note, en disant que notre plan n'était pas parfait, mais c'était de loin le meilleur de tous les plans, et aussi que nous sommes le parti qui avons démontré une capacité de mettre en œuvre, de déployer les mesures. 300 projets de transport collectif qui sont en construction présentement partout au Canada. On pourrait parler de l'électrification des transports. D'ici 2 ans, il y aura plus de bornes de recharge électrique au pays qu'il y a de stations-service. Le Parti conservateur a eu 5 sur 10 pour sa plateforme et le NPD 2 sur 10. C'est quand même assez incroyable. Le Parti conservateur du Canada, selon ce membre du GIEC, a une meilleure plateforme que le NPD. Pourquoi? Son analyse est assez simple. C'est facile de promettre la Lune, mais encore faut-il savoir comment y arriver. Et c'est exactement ce que le professeur Mark Jacquard a conclu. Je vous parlerai brièvement de la position du Bloc québécois. D'abord, je pense que parler de plateforme en environnement pour le Bloc québécois, c'est comme parler du contrat d'Erin O'Toole avec les Québécois. On en entend parler, mais on ne l'a pas vu. Et que dire de la position de M. Blanchette sur le 3e lien, qui n'est ni pour ni contre, bien au contraire. Et si on a bien compris, la solution que propose M. Blanchette dans le cadre de la lutte au changement climatique, c'est de construire plus d'autoroutes. Alors, très heureux d'être ici aujourd'hui et très, très, très heureux de vous présenter ma collègue et amie, la candidate d'Hochelaga, Soraya Martinez.
Merci Steven, puis bienvenue à tous dans la magnifique circonscription de Hochelaga. Alors, l'annonce d'aujourd'hui me touche particulièrement parce qu'il y a une crise du logement. Il y a une crise du logement à Montréal, il y a une crise du logement ici, particulièrement dans Hochelaga. Donc, ça me tient particulièrement à cœur, d'autant plus que quand j'étais jeune, ma mère et moi, nous avons été longtemps sur des listes d'attente de HLM et de coopératives. On y a jamais arrivé. On a fini dans un 4,5, petit 4,5, 4e étage avec mon frère en chaise roulante. Alors, je comprends l'anxiété des gens qui, encore aujourd'hui, se cherchent un logement abordable, un logement qui est salubre avec un loyer qui est décent. Et le plan qu'on vous présente aujourd'hui, le plan du Parti libéral, est un plan qui est ambitieux, mais réaliste et faisable, parce que tous les gens méritent un toit sur leur tête. Et ici, dans Hochelaga, dans l'est de Montréal, c'est un secteur qui se développe. Les entreprises viennent, les familles viennent, puis il faut s'assurer qu'ils ont à avoir un toit sur leur tête. Et je laisse la parole à notre chef qui, lui, a un plan pour le logement. Et je pense que le Parti libéral a démontré, comme le disait mon collègue, qu'on peut le réaliser ici, partout au pays, mais ici à Montréal et surtout dans mon comté, dans Hochelaga. Justin?
Merci Soraya pour cette introduction et surtout pour ce leadership que tu démontres en tant que députée, aussi en tant que candidate connectée aux gens ici dans Hochelaga. C'est un grand plaisir d'être de retour, de lutter à tes côtés. Mais je veux aussi souligner à quel point je suis fier de l'équipe qu'on a bâti, pas seulement ici à Montréal, mais à travers le pays. Mais on a des exemples extraordinaires de l'équipe avec laquelle on est en train de livrer un meilleur Canada pour tout le monde. Jonas, Pablo, Nancy, Steven, Soraya et Mélanie n'en sont que quelques exemples de l'équipe extraordinaire qu'on a à travers le pays. Aujourd'hui, je veux commencer effectivement, comme Soraya l'a dit, à parler de logement. C'est pas juste au Canada, un pays riche, un pays où on a tellement d'opportunités, que tant de gens ont tellement de misère à se trouver un logement abordable. C'est pas correct. Mais on sait aussi qu'il y a des gens qui vont promettre la lune au niveau du logement, mais ça prend du temps, ça prend de l'effort soutenu sur plusieurs années pour avoir des résultats. Et c'est pour ça un peu qu'on est dans ce pétrin, en partie, en termes de logement, parce que pendant 10 ans, les conservateurs ont refusé d'accepter que le fédéral avait quoi que ce soit à faire au niveau du logement. Ils se sont retirés entièrement. Alors, quand on est arrivé au pouvoir en 2015, on a lancé le travail, les consultations, et en 2017, on a annoncé justement notre stratégie nationale du logement qui a aidé énormément à changer la direction du logement dans ce pays-là. On a vu des centaines de milliers de familles se trouver un logement au fil des années qui ont suivi, mais on voit qu'il y a encore énormément plus à faire. But the thing with housing is that Political parties have decided that there's one thing they can promise that will suddenly fix everything in housing. That they've got the right promise to make, that people will say, oh great, we'll have a home. Canadians know that housing is a complex issue that is different from one family to the next. You have renters, you have young families trying to get into the housing market. You have older people looking to secure their retirement. You have people who are dealing with urban considerations, others that are more rural. There is no one-size-fits-all answer or solution on housing, and that's why our plan is complex, comprehensive, and complete. Nous savons que ça prend différentes approches pour lutter contre la crise du logement, et c'est exactement ce qu'on est en train de faire avec le plan le plus ambitieux de tous les partis, mais aussi le plus concret et réalisable. D'abord, on reconnaît ici à Hochelaga, à Montréal, il y a énormément de locataires. Donc nous allons en faire plus pour les protéger, empêcher les rénovictions, être là pour assurer la construction de plus d'édifices qui visent le logement, mais aussi les locataires, mais aussi d'aider les gens de passer de locataires à propriétaires avec un nouveau programme qu'on met sur pied. Mais aussi, il y a beaucoup de jeunes familles qui veulent s'acheter une première maison, qui trouvent ça encore de plus en plus loin. Alors, on est en train de mettre sur pied un programme d'épargne qui va les aider à épargner des dizaines de milliers de dollars de plus rapidement pour permettre à une mise de fonds. On est en train d'aider les gens à accéder au logement, mais en même temps, il faut s'assurer qu'on construise encore plus de logements. C'est pour ça qu'on va travailler avec les municipalités, avec les partenaires à travers le pays pour s'assurer qu'on crée 1,4 million de nouveaux logements dans les prochaines années. Et en plus, pour quiconque qui se cherche une maison maintenant, qui se retrouve sur le marché, ils savent qu'on est en train de voir des pratiques déloyales, des approches compétitives injustes. On va être là pour défendre les droits des acheteurs, empêcher l'argent étranger de venir investir dans des logements qui devraient être occupés par des familles. On veut être là avec un plan complet pour vous aider dans cette crise du logement, pour s'appliquer à cette crise avec la même urgence qu'on s'était forcé pendant cette crise de la pandémie pour vous protéger. Parce que c'est ça que ça prend. Et sur les changements climatiques, c'est la même chose. On a vu à quel point il a fallu répondre à la crise sanitaire de façon claire, de façon forte, de façon ambitieuse, de façon immédiate. C'est ce qu'on fait depuis les débuts en termes des changements climatiques, mais on va aller encore plus loin. Comme Stephen Guilbeault l'a dit, nous présentons le plan à la fois le plus ambitieux et le plus concret et réalisable de tous les partis. Les conservateurs, eux, ils proposent de retourner en arrière au plan Harper. Puis c'est pas juste de manquer d'ambition pour lutter contre les changements climatiques, c'est de vouloir reculer. On est déjà aujourd'hui sur la lignée qui va nous amener à dépasser de loin les cibles de Harper il y a plusieurs années. Or, M. O'Toole nous propose de revenir en arrière aux cibles et au plan Harper. Ça n'a pas de bon sens. On l'entend à tous les jours à quel point on a besoin d'en faire plus pour les changements climatiques, puis lui, il veut revenir en arrière. Mais de la même façon, le Bloc, qui n'a pas de plan pour l'environnement, et d'ailleurs qui a un chef qui vacille un petit peu sur ses positions environnementales, et le NPD qui est tout simplement absent du débat sur les changements climatiques. C'est pas à ça que s'attendent les progressistes, ni au Québec, ni à travers le pays. Nous avons besoin d'un plan ambitieux, d'un plan qui reconnaît l'urgence, mais aussi qui reconnaît les opportunités dans la lutte contre les changements climatiques. Oui, on va mettre une limite absolue sur les émissions des gaz à effet de serre de nos industries pétrolières et gazières. Absolument, il faut le faire et on va les baisser jusqu'à net zéro. Mais on va faire ça en créant aussi les investissements nécessaires pour assurer des bons emplois, des bonnes carrières, pour les années à venir. Les opportunités de croissance économique, les opportunités d'avoir un meilleur monde pour nos enfants, nos petits-enfants, ça devrait nous inspirer. Et les Canadiens, on est innovateurs. On a cette capacité de résoudre des problèmes, de prendre des défis comme opportunités. C'est exactement ce que nous proposons en disant que d'ici 2035, toutes les voitures neuves vendues au Canada vont être électriques. De s'assurer que notre réseau soit entièrement électrique et net zéro. Notre réseau électrique soit net zéro dans les années à venir. C'est ce genre de leadership concret, réalisable en matière d'environnement que les gens ont besoin. Et parlant de leadership, on le sait très bien, pendant des moments de défi, pendant des moments de crise, pendant des moments aussi cruciaux que les années qu'on est en train de vivre maintenant, pas seulement avec la crise sanitaire, avec la crise de l'environnement, avec la crise du logement, avec les défis au niveau des communautés autochtones et la réconciliation, avec tout ce qu'on a à faire, on a besoin d'un leadership qui est clair, qui est sans équivoque, qui dit les vraies choses aux Canadiens. C'est ça, justement, qu'on est en train de ne pas voir du chef conservateur. Puis, on l'a vu ces derniers jours sur les fusils, où M. O'Toole veut ramener les armes d'assaut, mais il ne veut pas le dire, il ne veut pas l'avouer aux Canadiens. Donc, il essaie de rassurer ses amis du lobby des armes à feu. Il essaie de dire aux Canadiens, non, on ne va pas le faire. Il a fait ça jeudi soir au débat. Il rassurait les Québécois. Non, je ne veux pas le faire, mais enfin, oui, je vais le faire, mais non, je ne vais pas le faire. Mon Dieu! Être politicien, être leader, ça veut dire de prendre ses responsabilités, de prendre des décisions claires. Et oui, il n'y a pas une décision importante qu'on peut faire que les gens vont être unanimes dessus. Mais il faut savoir s'assumer et dire non, on va interdire les armes d'assaut, comme on a fait au mois de mai passé, et être sans équivoque, même si oui, il y a des gens qui auraient préféré qu'on continue à permettre les gens d'acheter et d'utiliser ces armes-là au Canada. Non, je dis non, et les Canadiens, je pense, sont d'accord avec ça. C'est pour ça que M. O'Toole est ici dans le pétrin. Mais c'est pas juste sur cet enjeu-là, c'est un style de leadership qu'il avance. Quand il était dans des congrès conservateurs l'année passée, il parlait du fait que, oui, on devrait avoir bien plus de privés dans notre système de santé pour que les mieux nantis puissent avoir des options, des choix de sauter la queue, sauter la file. Ben voyons. C'est pas ça que les Canadiens veulent de notre système de santé. Ils veulent que notre système de santé public universel soit meilleur, absolument, mais meilleur pour tout le monde, pas juste pour les mieux nantis. Mais ça aussi, M. O'Toole est en train de se cacher de ses convictions profondes parce qu'il sait que c'est pas populaire avec les Canadiens. Il se dit pro-choix pour défendre le droit des femmes, mais il va même pas exiger à ses députés aussi de défendre les droits des femmes. Il y en a 80 dans son parti qui ont voté pour restreindre l'accès à l'avortement pour les femmes dernièrement. C'est pas ça du leadership. C'est pas ça que les Canadiens, les Québécois ont besoin d'entendre de M. O'Toole. Il se cache de ses vérités, de ses principes, de ses valeurs, parce qu'il sait qu'ils ne sont pas populaires chez la plupart des Québécois et des Canadiens. Ben voyons, c'est pas du leadership. Assume-toi. Dis ce que tu penses, défends tes principes, puis laissez les Canadiens choisir. Mais il veut pas. Puis c'est ça, justement, dont on a besoin. M. O'Toole ne veut pas faire les choses dont on a besoin, même promettre de déchirer l'entente de 6 milliards de dollars sur les garderies qu'on a avec le Québec, sans conditions, asymétriques, mais qui va permettre au Québec de créer des dizaines de milliers, jusqu'à 37 000 places, selon M. Legault, en garderie, dont les familles, particulièrement ici à Hochelaga, en ont besoin. Mais M. O'Toole ne veut pas admettre qu'il va scraper cet accord-là. Mais voyons. On est dans une élection où les gens ont besoin de faire des choix importants, un choix important sur comment on va avancer en tant que pays, comment on va en finir avec la pandémie, comment on va rebâtir en mieux, comment on va bâtir un avenir meilleur pour tous. Il ne peut même pas être clair avec les Canadiens sur ses propres plans. C'est pas ça du leadership. Et pendant que lui veut pas faire les choses dont on a besoin, M. Blanchette, lui, peut pas faire les choses dont on a besoin. Soyons honnêtes. M. Blanchette est en train de dire « sur l'Internet, sur les garderies, on est en train de livrer. Le Bloc québécois est là pour défendre les intérêts de tous les Québécois. » Mais voyons, c'est pas avec le Bloc qu'on a fait ces accords-là sur les garderies. C'est pas avec le Bloc qu'on est en train de signer des accords sur l'Internet haute vitesse dans chaque ménage au Canada, chaque ménage au Québec. C'est pas avec le Bloc qu'on a signé pour l'aérospatiale et les jobs vertes. C'est avec le gouvernement du Québec. C'est avec François Legault, avec qui d'ailleurs je parle quand même assez régulièrement, certainement plus souvent que M. Blanchette. On a une équipe forte au Québec qui parle haut et fort pour les Québécois, alignée avec leurs valeurs, mais qui peut livrer aussi. On n'est pas là pour chercher la chicane. Non, on n'est pas d'accord avec le gouvernement du Québec. Surtout, ce serait du jamais vu qu'on ait un gouvernement fédéral et un gouvernement provincial qui s'entendent sur tout. Ce serait plate. La réalité, on est là pour créer des solutions pour tous. On est là pour figurer comment on peut avancer pour tout le monde. Puis je suis très content de travailler avec M. Legault là-dessus. Les Québécois en voient les résultats concrets. Donc, nous allons continuer. We need to keep moving forward. We need to keep standing up for what we believe in, standing up for our values, standing up to make those hard decisions that will get us through this pandemic and into a better future. And to get through this pandemic, science is absolutely crystal clear on how we do that. Vaccinations. And almost 80% of Canadians have done exactly that. Did the right thing. Made the right sacrifices. Wore their masks. Washed their hands interminably. And got vaccinated. And now they want to get back to normal. They want to get back to a better future. And it's going to take firm, clear, steady leadership to say vaccines are the way through this. Erin O'Toole just said he expects that he would be able to get 90% of Canadians vaccinated in the coming months. He can't even get 90% of his candidates vaccinated. Come on! La façon qu'on va passer à travers cette pandémie, c'est avec la vaccination. Et presque 80% des Canadiens, des Québécois, ont fait ce qu'il fallait faire. Se sont fait vacciner et veulent qu'on en finisse avec cette pandémie. La réalité, c'est que M. O'Toole n'a pas le plan concret pour le faire. Il ne peut même pas s'assurer que ses propres candidats soient vaccinés. Comment est-ce qu'il va encourager ceux qui hésitent de se faire vacciner? Nous le disons très simplement. On sait que la grande majorité des gens ont fait ce qu'il fallait faire, veulent protéger les aînés, veulent protéger leurs enfants. Je les connais, les Québécois. On a hâte de pouvoir retourner en vacances cet hiver, prendre un vol pour le Mexique, pour Punta Cana. La réalité, c'est est-ce qu'on veut que nos enfants de 7 ans soient assis dans un avion à côté de quelqu'un non vacciné? Ben, M. O'Toole dit « Ah non, on ferait des tests de dépistage. » Ben non, c'est pas ça qui va protéger nos enfants. On est très clair. La fonction publique fédérale, dans un train, dans un avion, il faut être vacciné. Et en plus, on va payer pour les passeports vaccinaux des provinces pour s'assurer que les gens qui sont vaccinés, s'ils se retrouvent dans un gym, dans un resto, dans un théâtre, vont pouvoir être confiants qu'ils ne sont pas à risque de la personne à côté d'eux. C'est ça du leadership. Et le choix est clair pour les Canadiens. Ça prend du leadership pour en finir avec cette pandémie. M. O'Toole démontre à tous les jours qu'il n'a pas ce leadership. M. Blanchette ne peut pas avoir ce leadership. Le NPD est absent sur la plus grande crise à laquelle on fait face, la crise des changements climatiques. Et les Canadiens savent que la façon qu'on a passé à travers de cette pandémie, qu'on est en train de passer à travers de cette pandémie, c'est en étant là, les uns pour les autres, parce que c'est ce qu'on fait. C'est dans notre caractère en tant que personne. Comme gouvernement, comme citoyen, on doit être là, les uns pour les autres. C'est ce qu'on a fait, c'est ce qu'on va continuer à faire si on choisit d'avancer ensemble. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, M. Trudeau. On va commencer la période de questions avec Laurence Martin de Radio-Canada. Une question, un suivi.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau. Le Conseil scolaire Providence en Ontario a brûlé 5000 livres jugés néfastes aux Autochtones, Tintin, Astérix, même des livres qui ont été primés il y a environ une dizaine d'années. Est-ce que vous pensez que c'est acceptable que des écoles brûlent des livres si elles ne sont pas d'accord avec leur contenu?
Tout d'abord, nous devons se souvenir que la réconciliation avec les peuples autochtones, c'est notre responsabilité à tous. C'est pas juste les peuples autochtones et le gouvernement qui doivent se réconcilier. Nous devons le faire à travers le pays, dans nos communautés. Chaque personne a ses responsabilités, a ses choix à faire. C'est pas au fédéral de gérer des décisions des commissions scolaires. Mais nous, dans nos aires de juridiction, nos compétences, on a fait énormément de pas pour changer les attitudes, pour travailler en partenariat et dans le respect avec les Autochtones, pour avoir une meilleure réconciliation avec eux.
En suivi.
OK. En tout respect, M. Trudeau, vous ne répondez pas à ma question, donc je vais vous la reposer. Puis je pense qu'elle est importante parce que Suzy Keys, qui a participé activement à ce processus, est aussi la coprésidente de la Commission des peuples autochtones du Parti libéral depuis 2016. Donc, est-ce que vous pensez que c'est acceptable que des écoles brûlent des livres s'ils ne sont pas d'accord avec leur contenu? Est-ce qu'on peut avoir une réponse claire, M. Trudeau?
À un niveau personnel, je suis jamais d'accord à ce qu'on brûle des livres. Mais il faut aussi se souvenir que c'est pas à moi, c'est pas aux non-autochtones de dire aux autochtones comment ils devraient se sentir ou comment ils devraient agir pour avancer la réconciliation. Nous devons démontrer une compréhension de la tristesse, peut-être de la colère que beaucoup d'entre eux éprouvent à l'égard de la réconciliation et du travail que nous avons encore à faire. Et c'est pas moi à dire comment ils devraient articuler cette colère ou cette tristesse. C'est à moi d'être partenaire pour essayer d'avancer de façon positive. Obviously, I'm never going to be comfortable with burning of books, but we need to make sure that we are not telling Indigenous peoples how they should feel about reconciliation. That we're not dictating to Indigenous peoples what they can do or how they should act or react. We need to be there in partnership, in respect, in understanding for the terrible trauma that they've gone through, the intergenerational legacy of residential schools, of forced assimilation, of mistreatment of kids, of systemic discrimination. We need to listen, we need to respect, and we need to try and work together in positive ways to make sure that we all learn the lessons of reconciliation.
Prochaine question.
Bonjour, M. Trudeau. Catherine Lévesque, La Presse canadienne. Je voulais faire réagir sur la modification de la plateforme du Parti conservateur concernant les armes à feu. Là, on y a mis une note de bas de page qui dit « Toutes les armes actuellement interdites le resteront ». Est-ce que M. O'Toole s'assume en ce moment?
Bien, tout d'abord, laissez-moi dire que c'est très facile de faire des modifications au pamphlet, je dirais pas plateforme, conservateur, parce qu'il n'y a pas de coût associé à ces promesses. Il n'y a pas de tableau à la fin de cette plateforme qui explique c'est quoi la trajectoire de dépenses sur les prochaines années, comment ils vont comment ils vont concrètement livrer ces promesses-là. Et tout parti sérieux qui veut former un gouvernement se doit de démontrer son travail, démontrer qu'il a fait ses devoirs, puis malheureusement, à ce niveau-là, ils ne l'ont pas fait. Par rapport à ce genre de recul, il est en train d'essayer de berner les Québécois, les Canadiens sur les armes à feu. Il sait que sa position de vouloir ramener les armes d'assaut, de les permettre à circuler au Canada, est pas populaire. Donc, il va essayer d'expliquer que non, c'est pas vraiment ce que je voulais dire. On va travailler pour une révision. On va faire des... Non, voyons. Moi, je préfère écouter Police se souvient et le lobby des armes à feu qui sont tous deux d'accord pour dire que M. O'Toole n'a pas changé sa position. Puis son manque de clarté, je pense que c'est quelque chose qu'on voit de plus en plus en dessous de ses promesses. Like, first of all, we have to recognize that it's very easy for Mr. O'Toole to modify his electoral program, I won't call it a platform, because he actually hasn't costed it. There are no tables at the end of it like there are in the Liberal platform to show what the expenses are over the coming years, how much every promise will cost, and what the fiscal trajectory is, or he's going to magically get the budget back to balance. He's not showing his work. He's not doing his homework. And if you want to be taken seriously as a potential government, you have to be honest with Canadians. But that's something that we're seeing is increasingly difficult for Mr. O'Toole to do. On guns, we've seen it very clearly, but it's on other ways. And whether or not he's actually going to, maintain the ban on the 1,500 different models of assault weapons that we banned over a year ago, well, I'm not going to believe whatever it is that he's trying to say at this particular minute, knowing that he might say something different an hour from now. I'm going to trust what two groups that never agree on anything actually finally agree on. Police se souvient and staunch gun control advocates are in agreement with the gun lobby to say that no, actually, Mr. O'Toole is still going to bring back those military-style assault weapons to Canada. And the fact that he knows Canadians don't want that is why he's trying to mislead, deceive, and hide the truth from Canadians.
En suivi?
Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio.
I just want to begin by acknowledging that we're gathered on the traditional territories, the Mississaugas, the New Credit, and that every time we acknowledge the traditional territories, we think about the injustice suffered by the first people of this land and our commitment to fight for justice. And I want to thank my candidates here, Brian and Norm, for being here, representing some of our candidates, two of our candidates in Toronto. Today we want to talk about our commitment to fight the climate crisis. This is one of the, if not the most serious crises that we're dealing with. While we have been grappling with the global pandemic, the climate crisis has not gone away, and if anything, it's getting worse. We're seeing the record changes in the climate impacting us right now in our lives. People are being devastated by forest fires across the country. We have seen heat waves, and we have seen the impacts of flooding. The climate crisis is here, but we can still fight it. We will not be able to fight it, though, with another 4 years of Justin Trudeau, who has been an abysmal failure on the climate crisis. And I don't say that lightly. I'm sad to say this because I want us to win this fight, and I know we can. I know we can beat the climate crisis. We can fight it and we can win, but we certainly cannot win when Justin Trudeau is more interested in the past year in meeting with oil lobbyists and oil and gas lobbyists than actually doing what it takes to fight this crisis. We've learned that over the past year, he's had over 250 meetings with the oil and gas lobby, which is, for folks that recall, the most since 2011 when the oil and gas lobby had a cozy relationship with Mr. Harper. And it reflects in the decisions he's making. He promised to end fossil fuel subsidies and instead increase them by $900 million. He sets targets and continues to miss them. And the thing is, this is where Mr. Trudeau's failed promises or his broken word, or when he says things all for show and doesn't deliver, this is where it hurts us the most, because the impact is we are not doing our part to fight the climate crisis. Emissions continue to go up. We're seeing the impacts of those emissions, and it is hurting us. The entire community of Lytton was wiped out because of forest fire caused by the climate crisis. So we know the impacts are hurting us right now. So our plan is to fight this climate crisis like we really want to win it. And one of those plans is to double the fund that's used to invest in public transit in municipalities across our country. Right now that fund is at $2.2 billion. We want to double it to $4.4 billion. And that would help us invest in more public transit, electrify the fleets, make it more affordable and accessible for communities to access public transit, and make sure that we do our part to reduce our emissions. We know that transportation is one of the largest causes of emissions, and by investing in public transit, investing in electrifying it, we can reduce our emissions significantly. I want to thank you all for being here again. Donc en français, je veux dire que ce qu'on a vu dans cette pandémie, c'était les autres crises n'ont pas disparu. Et une des crises les plus sérieuses, c'était la crise climatique. Et on a vu les impacts de cette crise dans notre vie maintenant. On a vu les impacts des feux de forêt, des canicules. On a vu des communautés entièrement détruites par les feux de forêt causés par le changement climatique. Donc, on doit faire face à cette crise. Et on peut faire face à cette crise. Mais on ne peut pas agir avec 4 ans de plus de Justin Trudeau, qui donne des belles paroles, oui, mais ses actions ne suivent pas ses paroles. Et la réalité, c'est qu'il a le pire bilan dans tous les pays G7 et continue d'augmenter les émissions au lieu de les réduire. Elle a dit qu'elle va arrêter ou éliminer les subventions aux pétrolières, mais au lieu de ça, elle a augmenté les subventions au lieu de les éliminer. Donc notre proposition, c'est d'augmenter un élément de notre plan de faire face à cette crise climatique, c'est d'augmenter le fonds pour investir dans les municipalités, dans les transports en commun. Donc on propose de doubler le montant permanemment pour investir dans le transport en commun, pour électrifier le transport, pour rendre l'accès au transport en commun plus facile et plus abordable et même gratuit dans les cas. On peut faire face à cette crise, mais vous avez un choix de voter pour Justin Trudeau qui a manqué chaque cible qu'il a proposée, ou l'NPD qui vont prendre au sérieux cette crise et qui vont faire face à la crise climatique dans une manière où on gagne et on fait notre part pour bâtir un meilleur avenir pour nos enfants. Et c'est exactement ce qu'on va faire. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. With that, I'm ready for any questions you might have.
First question, Christian Ejikte from CTV News.
Good morning, Mr. Singh. I want to ask
rendre l'accès au transport en commun plus facile et plus abordable et même gratuit dans les cas. On peut faire face à cette crise, mais vous avez un choix de voter pour Justin Trudeau qui a manqué chaque cible qu'il a proposée, ou l'NPD qui vont prendre au sérieux cette crise et qui vont faire face à la crise climatique dans une manière où on gagne et on fait notre part pour bâtir un meilleur avenir pour nos enfants. Et c'est exactement ce qu'on va faire. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. With that, I'm ready for any questions you might have.
First question, Christian Ejikte from CTV News.
Good morning, Mr. Singh. I want to ask you, first off, what you thought of the protest yesterday with Liberal leader Justin Trudeau and gravel getting thrown at him in London as he was getting back on the bus. Does this speak to the state of where we're at in this election? And what do you want to say to those protesters?
I think first of all, what happened is horrible. That should never have happened, and I'm worried about Mr. Trudeau, his family that may be on the bus, the media, the volunteers, his team. That should never happen. It is absolutely wrong, and I want to highlight there are a handful, a small percentage of very troubled people that are violently attacking people just for their views. Like, I disagree with Mr. Trudeau all the time, but it is absolutely wrong to be throwing stones. I mean, I can't imagine that I'm saying this in 2021, don't throw stones at people because you disagree with them. That is basic. That should not be happening. But these are some clearly troubled people who think it's okay to throw stones at someone. But they have to be taken seriously. So we got to make sure we're doing everything we can to keep our team safe. We've got to assess the security before we do an event. Sadly, because of people like this who are causing a real threat to the media that comes with us on the tour, to our volunteers, to our staff, to our team, this cannot happen. And we've got to be very careful that we don't allow us to be in a situation where this happens again.
En français, s'il te plaît.
C'est complètement inacceptable, c'est inexcusable que les gens ont effectivement fait des violences contre M. Trudeau et son équipe et les médias avec lui. C'est complètement inacceptable. On peut manifester, c'est le droit, mais il y a des gens qui ont clairement des problèmes de santé mentale, qui pensent que c'est d'accord de jeter quelque chose à quelqu'un pour le blesser. C'est complètement inacceptable et j'encourage toutes les équipes de faire une analyse sécuritaire pour savoir si on peut avoir des événements dans une manière sécuritaire pour protéger pas seulement notre équipe, nos bénévoles, mais aussi les médias qui sont avec nous, parce que la violence dans ce cas était aussi dirigée vers les médias aussi, et j'ai des grandes inquiétudes par rapport à ça. Donc on doit avoir la capacité de faire la campagne, mais on doit le faire dans une manière sécuritaire, et c'est complètement inacceptable ce qui se passe avec ces manifestants.
And my follow-up, Mr. Singh, no disrespect, but today's announcement seems a little light in terms of what you want to do to reduce emissions in Canada. I know you have other plans. There must be a little bit more that you want to add on with regards to reducing emissions in Canada.
Well, really, we want to put the choice to Canadians, and this is one of the most serious crises. And when we're seeing this serious crisis, we've got to take some concrete steps. We propose one of those today, investing in public transit. We know is important. But I really want to put out this call to Canadians. We have seen Mr. Trudeau make a lot of big promises and not back them up. But one of those promises that has hurt us the most has been his promises around the environment. He came in sounding really different in 2015, and it seemed like a breath of fresh air. But he has the worst track record of every country in the G7 when it comes to emissions. He sets targets and misses them. He says he's going to end fossil fuel subsidies, and instead of ending them, he increases them. He puts in a price on pollution, but exempts the biggest polluters. He has failed abysmally when it comes to fighting the environmental crisis that we're up against. And it is sad, and I think about what that means to the young people that are standing with me today that are so desperate. In some cases, they're worried about what's the point of even investing in our future when we don't know what that future is going to look like. I met kids who are saying, I don't even want to go to school. I don't want to pursue a post-secondary education because what's the point? What's going to happen to the planet? I don't want to pursue the thought of even having a family because I don't know what's up in the future my kid's going to grow up into. And I think about that for my own kid. I can't imagine that Mr. Trudeau gets up and says he's going to do something about the climate and then continues to increase emissions. And he meets with the oil and gas lobby so many times that it's as much as when it was at its highest with Mr. Harper. So it's clear if you want to choose to fight this climate crisis in this election, you can't choose another 4 years of Mr. Trudeau, who simply doesn't make this a priority and does the opposite of what he says. Promises to reduce emissions, increases them. That's not going to help us. In fact, that's hurting us. And I'm saying to you, you can vote for New Democrats. We care, and we're going to fight this crisis with everything we have.
Next question, David Thurton from CBC News.
Hey, Mr. Singh, very good to see you again today.
Yeah.
For the last couple of days, Justin Trudeau has attacked the NDP's climate plan. He says that it is less credible than the Conservative plan. So I'm wondering, what is your response to that? And also, when you read the plan, I haven't seen any proposal from the NDP to increase the price on carbon to meet your goals of reducing emissions by 50%. So what would be the price on carbon that the NDP would charge big emitters, consumers, in order to meet your goal of reducing emissions by 50%?
Well, the big difference is we've got 6 years of evidence. Mr. Trudeau can say all he wants, and he does that. I want folks to remember he said a whole bunch of things in 2019, just 2 years ago. And he breaks those commitments. And it hurts people. And in this case, what happens, he makes a big commitment, says a big plan about fighting the climate crisis. And then we've seen year over year emissions go up. So what's the point of supporting someone who claims to have a plan that works when we've got the evidence of him being in power for 6 years and completely and utterly failing to meet any of his targets? What's the point? He could have the best plan in the world, but he had 6 years to do something about it, and he didn't. We had 2 more years on this mandate, and instead of using those 2 more years to fight the climate crisis, he didn't. We have the evidence in front of us. Mr. Trudeau cannot be believed on fighting the climate crisis. One of the biggest things that we're going to do is, while Mr. Trudeau exempted the biggest polluters on his plan to fight the climate crisis, we're not going to exempt them. We're going to make sure that they pay their fair share. We're not going to allow the biggest polluters, the biggest emitters to be exempted. We're going to make sure that they're contributing fairly so that we can tackle this climate crisis. We know we can do it. I have so much hope for the future, but only if we make different choices. And the only way to do that is to vote differently. We can't vote the same way and expect the same results. You have to vote differently, and I encourage everyone to get out and vote. This Friday is advanced polls, so get out, find a plan, and get out and vote.
En français, s'il te plaît.
On a la preuve devant nous. Justin Trudeau peut montrer aucun plan comme il veut maintenant. Mais on a vu dans le passé, il fait la même chose. Il donne des grandes paroles, des belles paroles, il donne des bons plans. Mais on a 6 ans de preuves quand il était Premier ministre. Qu'est-ce qu'il a fait? Il a manqué chaque cible. Au lieu de réduire les émissions, il les a augmentées. Donc, comment on peut croire dans ses propos maintenant quand on a vu déjà ce qu'il fait comme Premier ministre? Il a manqué chaque cible. Au lieu d'arrêter ou éliminer les subventions aux pétrolières, il les a augmentées à 900 millions de dollars. Il a mis un prix sur la pollution, mais il a exempté les plus grands pollueurs. Donc à chaque fois, il a dit quelque chose pour faire face à la crise climatique. Effectivement, il a fait l'opposé. Et ça a blessé les gens parce que la crise climatique continue, les émissions augmentent et ça a un impact négatif sur notre planète, sur notre environnement. Et on ne peut pas aborder un carton de plus de Justin Trudeau. Donc, si on veut avoir les résultats différents, on doit faire des choix différents, on doit faire des décisions différentes, on doit voter différents. Donc, je vous encourage de voter différent dans cette élection, voter pour l'NPD. On veut faire face à cette crise climatique avec tous nos efforts, avec tout ma cœur, et on peut le faire et on va le faire.
Just if I could follow up, so the Liberal plan is $50 per ton in 2022, rising to $170 per ton by 2030. What is going to be the NDP's price on carbon to reach your targets?
I really want to be clear on this. Whatever Mr. Trudeau says, he can put any plan out there. What is the point of believing in him when he doesn't believe in his own plans? Because if he did, he would spend 2 more years fighting for them. If he actually believed in fighting the climate crisis, why did he call an election instead? We could have continued for 2 more years. It's really important for people to acknowledge, how can we take a really serious, honest look at his plan? When just 2 years ago, he made it really clear that pharmacare was one of his #1 priorities. It was a major priority. He included it in throne speech. He said it was important, but then he completely abandoned it, and in his fully costed plan, there's not a single dollar, a single cent on fighting the climate crisis, or fighting for bringing in pharmacare. So it's clear we can't believe Mr. Trudeau on the climate crisis. You can believe us. We care deeply. we'll do whatever it takes. We're not afraid of the big polluters. We're not going to cave into the big oil and gas industry as Mr. Trudeau has. It really comes down to our commitment and our conviction. We are committed and have the conviction to fight this climate crisis because we care deeply and we are committed to doing it.
Prochaine question, Sébastien Desrosiers de Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, Monsieur Singh. Des maires de 5 grandes villes au Québec tiennent un point de presse ce matin, Montréal, Québec, Laval, Longueuil et Gatineau, pour demander aux chefs des partis fédéraux de s'engager à réduire le trafic d'armes illégales au Québec. En fait, ils demandent deux choses, de réduire le nombre d'armes qui traversent les frontières, qui est évidemment du ressort du gouvernement fédéral. Puis ils demandent également que la responsabilité du contrôle de ces armes-là ne revienne pas aux municipalités. Quel est votre plan? Vous dites vouloir bannir les armes d'assaut, réduire le nombre d'armes illégales en circulation. Quel est votre plan et voulez-vous rendre un programme de rachat obligatoire, par exemple? Qu'est-ce que vous répondez à ces maires-là?
Merci beaucoup pour la question. Premièrement, je comprends pourquoi les municipalités ont se rassemblé pour mettre en œuvre ou pour proposer cette demande ou pour montrer ces demandes parce que on a un grand problème de violence causée par les armes à feu et ça frappe fort dans les grandes municipalités, les grands centres urbains. On a vu ça ici à Toronto, au Québec. On a vu des actes de violence récemment, donc je comprends pourquoi c'est vraiment une grave inquiétude. Donc notre plan, oui, on est pour un rachat obligatoire des armes d'assaut parce qu'on veut protéger la population et ça veut dire qu'on veut mettre en œuvre un programme qui fonctionne pour les interdire, pas un programme volontaire, mais un programme obligatoire. Deuxièmement, M. Trudeau a promis de faire ça. Il a promis de mettre en œuvre un programme de rachat obligatoire, une interdiction, mais il ne l'a pas fait. Donc oui, on veut le faire. On veut aussi investir plus de ressources dans nos services qui travaillent sur la frontière pour arrêter le transport illégal de ces armes, parce qu'on sait que le grand montant de ces armes traverse la frontière, donc plus de ressources, plus de travailleurs et travailleuses peuvent nous aider dans cette lutte.
Ce matin, on apprend que sur Radio-Canada que des écoles du sud-ouest de l'Ontario se sont débarrassées de milliers de livres qui, selon ce conseil scolaire, nuisent à la réconciliation, entretiennent des stéréotypes sur les Autochtones, des livres comme des bandes dessinées d'Astérix, par exemple, qui ont été brûlés dans certains cas. Est-ce que vous êtes favorable avec cette façon de faire?
J'ai réfléchi sur cette question un peu parce que j'ai la lis en avant et j'ai pensé de qu'est-ce qu'on était appris dans l'école des communautés autochtones. C'était quoi les leçons qu'on a appris et c'était quoi notre approche, nos idées sur la communauté autochtone quand on était jeune. Et je pense que j'ai vu des images négatives, des caricatures, une présentation qui ne respecte la dignité de les communautés autochtones. Donc, je pense qu'on doit vraiment changer notre approche dans l'enceinte de nos enfants. Et une réflexion sur cette question, c'est important. Qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire pour améliorer comment on présente l'histoire de la communauté autochtone, comment on peut mieux enseigner nos enfants de l'histoire, de leur contribution, de leur vie, de comment ils ont vécu des grandes injustices. Donc cette réflexion, c'est important de faire et c'est quelque chose que je pense qu'on doit faire.
Could you repeat the question on mayors and guns in English, please?
Yes, on mayors and guns. This is I can understand why some mayors in Quebec have come together to demand action on assault weapons and handguns. They're worried because they're seeing an increase in violence. It's very serious. We're seeing the loss of life. based on gun violence. We've seen it here in Toronto. We've seen it in Quebec. So it is really serious. And so what we're proposing is we would support a mandatory buyback of assault weapons. It's something Mr. Trudeau had said he would do. It's something that advocates have demanded, and Mr. Trudeau backed away from that commitment. We would bring in a mandatory buyback so that we could absolutely ban these assault weapons. They should be banned, and that mandatory buyback would help us get there. In terms of stopping the flow of weapons, what the mayors have outlined is what we've found as well, is that the largest quantity or the biggest proportion of weapons that are coming illegally into Canada are coming across the border. So we need to invest, and what we're proposing to do is invest more resources and staffing and human resources into our border security to make sure that we are doing everything we can to stop the flow of those weapons. Those are some of the things we can do immediately to respond to those demands and to do our part to fight the gun violence that's going on.
Next question from John Chidley Hill, Canadian Press.
Good morning, Mr. Singh.
Morning.
My question for you is, why are you now hedging on canceling the TMX pipeline extension?
I've been opposed to this project. I think it's the wrong thing to do, and I've always been opposed to it.
We're facing, obviously, a science-based crisis right now with the COVID-19 pandemic. Climate change is also a science-based crisis. In both cases, misinformation has really slowed our progress. What would you do to fight misinformation in climate change?
I really appreciate the question. I think there is certainly a lot of misinformation out there when it comes to many things, COVID-19 as well as the climate. This is where the more trust people have in our institutions, the better it is. And what we can do is more transparency, providing people with a background where information is coming from, being really clear on the evidence. The evidence is clear. We're seeing the scientists around the world, the vast majority of scientists have come together, United Nations reports, and have said clearly that human activity is increasing emissions, which is directly causing the climate to change, and it is directly contributing to the extreme weather we're seeing. And we are living the reality of that. So providing more transparency, more information, committing more time to education around this, and then talking about the solutions. I think what happens also is when we talk about the problem, without emphasizing the solutions, people end up feeling a lot of despair and a lot of hopelessness and then don't know if they can do anything about it. We know if we made the right decisions, we could tackle the three biggest causes of emissions. Producing energy, we can invest in renewable energy. Transportation, like we're doing today, we can invest in public transit and electrifying that transportation and making it easier to access, more affordable. And we know that the way we heat and cool our homes and buildings is another one of the large contributors to the greenhouse gases. We can improve that. We can improve the way we heat and cool our homes and buildings, and we could do our part. We can actually fight this crisis and we can win. So really it comes down to better information, better education, and then really emphasizing that there are solutions and that Mr. Trudeau's approach has been a failure and people cannot afford another 4 years of that. People have to vote differently if they want different results, and we are committed to fighting this crisis. We can create good jobs, we can fight the crisis, we can build a better future.
Next question, Jamie Tumulty from City TV.
Hey, Mr. Leader, good morning.
Good morning.
I heard your answer when you were asked about the people that threw rocks at the Prime Minister, but these were anti-vaxxers that tried to assault the people on the bus and assault our Prime Minister. Do you have stronger words to them other than they shouldn't throw rocks, given the fact that some of the politicians that you're debating with and provincially are aligning themselves with these people?
Well, I mean, I don't know what more you can say. This is horrible. It's completely wrong. There is no justification for throwing rocks at people. It's just wrong. Like, I don't understand what these folks are thinking, what type of example they're trying to set for their kids. If someone doesn't agree with you, you're not going to go up to them and throw rocks at them. That is messed up. Like, and what it does, it also, what troubles me is the focus on media. Like, people can disagree with politicians. The media are just reporting on what's being said. There is no excuse to be attacking politicians. There is no excuse to be attacking, physically attacking politicians or media. I don't understand what these folks are thinking. I think some of them must be troubled, must not be well for them to be doing this. But clearly, this is something that must be immediately stopped. No one should be allowed to do this. You cannot be threatening violence or committing violence against people because you disagree with their beliefs. That cannot happen.
We will go to questions on
Can you hear
Zoom. The first question will be from Michael Kutara, Global News. Mike, are you still on mute? Maybe we'll come back to Mike. We will go to Menaka Raman Wilms from the Globe and Mail.
Good morning, Mr. Singh. You've been asked a couple of times now about the increasingly intense. Can you hear me okay? Is that loud enough?
No, I think it's on our end. Thank you for noticing that.
Oh, okay.
I'm asking to bump you up a bit more. But yeah, go on.
Okay, I'll start and you can let me know if you need me to repeat anything. But you've been asked a couple of times now about the increasingly intense protests that we've seen on the campaign trail, and you said we need to ensure this doesn't happen again. How do we do that though? Should parties be looking at increasing security at campaign events?
I appreciate the question. Thank you so much. You can turn it back down now. Now I'm getting a lot of feedback on myself. So yeah, first of all, it's wrong, and this shouldn't be that the media or that political leaders have to worry about this so much and have to change their plans because of this. But the reality is maybe we do need to be more careful about where we are holding events, do a stronger security analysis, and be careful because I'm not worried about myself ever in these type of circumstances, but I am worried about my team. I'm worried about the people around me. I'm worried about volunteers. I'm worried about the media, and no one should be under the threat of violence or be attacked. And so I think we need to be a bit more careful about where events are being held and acknowledging that there is some troubled folks out there that are resorting to violence, and that means that we've got to be more careful. And so I'm going to make sure that my team does a really strong analysis of the places where we hold our events to make sure that we don't allow for even the potential of this to happen. I don't blame any of the political parties for it, but I think that we do need to be more vigilant now, seeing that as this is happening more often, we've got to be more careful to protect the people around us, the team around us, so that no one is injured. And so we got to be careful.
Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio.
Henry, to talk about more details around the announcement we made 2 weeks ago about the implementation of a BC vaccine card. At the outset, I want to say that people have been responding. Minister Dix will have the decimal point, but as of today, 85% of British Columbians over the age of 12 have received a first dose, and 78% have received 2 doses. This is very good news, an extraordinary effort by all British Columbians. I want to commend the public health team for putting in place a vaccination program that was safe, effective, and seamless for the vast majority of British Columbians. Vaccines are a vital tool in our toolkit to put COVID-19 behind us. Over the past 19 months, we've been taking extraordinary steps to keep people safe, to reduce the impact on our healthcare system, and keep our businesses open to the greatest extent possible. The implementation of a BC vaccine card will allow us to ensure that those non-essential businesses that have been adversely affected by lockdowns and shutdowns and public health orders can now confidently say to their patrons who have been double vaccinated that they are operating a business that is safe for them to enter and enjoy a meal, enjoy the theater, go to a sporting event. These initiatives are critically important to our success going forward, and I'm very excited about the prospects of over the next number of months. These measures that we're putting in place will be mirrored in other jurisdictions across Canada. Already, Quebec, Ontario, and Manitoba are underway, and I'm absolutely confident that other provinces will join in, and the federal government, following the outcome of the September 20th election, will also be taking steps to finalize the initiatives that they've already undertaken at the administrative level to make sure that those who are traveling outside of Canada can do so confidently with immunization data available to other countries, and those who are coming into Canada will also be able to prove that they have taken steps to protect themselves and their loved ones by getting 2 vaccines. But we have seen an unacceptable surge in COVID cases, largely among those who've not yet had the opportunity to be vaccinated. And I encourage all British Columbians to weigh against their particular point of view today the positive benefits of following so many other British Columbians getting vaccinated to protect yourself, to protect your families, and allowing us all to move forward, keeping our economy going, making sure that jobs are still there for people as we go forward into what will be, I'm hopeful, an absolutely terrific 2022 and beyond. But in order for that to happen, we all have to unite once again with a common purpose, to see the BC vaccine card as a way to get to those places where we want to be, at a sporting event, at the theater, going out to a movie, having dinner with some friends. Large gatherings can take place with double vaccinations. And I want to tell British Columbians that there are many things that the vaccine card is, but there are many things that they are certainly not. And one of them is not to impede services, basic services from government. You do not have to be concerned about not being able to access provincial services, municipal services, because you've only had 1 vaccine or you've had no vaccines at all. So this is not taking away something. It's adding to what you're able to do, and those are the things that most of us enjoy so much. So let's focus on that. Let's focus on making sure we get those numbers up from 85% to 90% and beyond, and we do that by focusing on all of the benefits that the BC vaccine card can bring to British Columbia. And with that, I'll ask Dr. Henry to go into some of the more intimate details about how this is going to operate over the next number of weeks.
Thank you very much, Premier, and good afternoon. As people here know, the responsibility and focus of our teams in public health across the province have been to monitor, reduce risks, take steps to protect the health of everybody here in British Columbia. When it comes to COVID-19, it's all about that balance. Our goals have always been to reduce sickness and death from the virus, to make sure our healthcare system is not overwhelmed so that people with COVID, but also people with every other health issue, can get the care that they need. And, of course, to minimize the disruption of society, because we know that has effects on our health, our mental health, and our physical health. As we all know, it's not easy, and we have tried to find that balance of making sure we have enough restrictions in place to stop and slow the transmission of the virus, as well as allowing as much as possible to happen to keep society open and functioning. We want to reduce the risk for everybody and balance that with minimizing disruption. And this is the balance that we've worked hard to achieve. And right now, at this phase in the pandemic, we have another tool in our toolbox. We have vaccination. And vaccinations have been proving very, very successful in helping us stem the transmission and, importantly, preventing people from having severe illness, ending up in hospital and ICU. But we're not yet at a point where we can let down our guard. And we have an additional effective tool that has changed the role. I think we need to recognize that nobody likes this virus, that we're not happy that we are here right now. But we also need to recognize that some have carried a much greater burden. Loved ones have been lost, businesses have been closed, and jobs have gone away. And healthcare workers, my colleagues across this province, have been put to the test. We know now that these vaccines are safe, they're effective, and they make a difference in stopping transmission, stopping people from getting sick and ill. And getting vaccinated and showing proof of the vaccination will help protect all of us. It protects those people who are not yet old enough to be immunized, our children, so that they can have a normal school year. It protects the people whose immune systems aren't functioning as well, so that they can continue. And it protects our elders and seniors. And we've seen that again in areas in the province where we've had pockets of people who are not yet vaccinated. It can still spread very rapidly, and the risk of people who are not yet vaccinated is much, much higher, as we've seen. It's 12 times greater risk of infection 34 times greater risk of ending up in hospital compared to the same person, the same age person. So this vaccine card is another tool that we have that allows us to continue to do things safely in those businesses, and one of the ways that we can reduce our risk going into the fall season. Ultimately, the choice is yours about whether you choose to be vaccinated or not. But what we need to do is make sure that we can continue to keep things open as much as possible. And that's what the BC vaccine card is all about. Without the card, optional, discretionary, social, recreational events and activities might have needed even more restrictions and measures than what we have in place today as we're moving into the fall. So this proof of vaccination will take effect on September 13th, and between the 13th and the 24th of October, people who have at least one dose of vaccine will be able to access these discretionary social, recreational events and activities. And then after October 24th, it'll be fully vaccinated people with 2 doses, or some people who may have received the single-dose J&J vaccine in the past. We have put the vaccine card in place, as I said, to keep businesses open, to keep people working, and most importantly, to keep people safe. If you've not yet been vaccinated, that is your choice. But these essential activities and services will remain open for you, just as the case has been for the last 20 months. You will have alternatives to participate in the settings where proof of vaccination will be required. In order, however, to minimize disruption for as many people as possible and make these discretionary events and activities as safe as possible, these are where proof of vaccine will be required. So let me share the details. As of September 13th, I will have new public health orders in place requiring proof of at least one vaccine to access these businesses and events. I will say until September 27th, you can use our new BC vaccine card, and I have more details about that. Or you can also show your vaccine record, the card or paper that you received when you were immunized. As of October 24th, you'll be required to present your BC vaccine card showing you're fully immunized to access this same list. So what we're talking about are indoor ticketed sporting events, so whether you want to see the Canucks or the Lions, indoor concerts, theater, dance, and symphony events, so that we can get back to those arts events that we are so missing, and being able to do it in a way that we can reassure each other is safe. Licensed restaurants, including indoor and patio dining, and cafes, and restaurants that have table service. So what is not here are fast food restaurants, cafeterias, food courts, where people grab and go or drive through. We know that those are much different situations. People are there for a much shorter period of time, and it's not practical to require somebody to try and check a vaccine card in those settings. We also are including nightclubs, casinos, and areas where people now will be able to be reassured that they can go to these places more safely. Movie theaters as well. We're including some of these high-risk settings that have so impacted businesses, including fitness centers, businesses offering those indoor recreational classes, indoor high-intensity classes like spin classes. This will be that added layer of protection so that businesses don't have continuing clusters and outbreaks and aren't needed to be closed during this coming fall. As well, importantly, organized indoor events. So right now, there's gathering limits that starting at 50, so weddings, parties, conferences, meetings, workshops that are indoor events where people are gathering together with the public. And discretionary organized indoor group recreational classes and activities. These are the activities like seniors' fitness classes, for example, where you will now need to show proof of vaccination to attend those safely. As you can see with all of these, we've learned other ways of participating. So if you choose not to be immunized, then there's ways that you can support your local restaurants by continuing to do takeout, by participating in outdoor exercise activities or online activities. as well as watching your favorite Canucks game on TV. So what is the BC vaccine card? It is a card that will allow people to conveniently and securely show their proof of vaccination using either a digital, which you can see here, or a paper version. It will show whether you are either fully vaccinated, partially vaccinated, or no record found. And it's very simple. I know many people tried today, as did I, to enter in some basic information, and a card will come up. It will have a QR code, which is scannable. So it's a scannable square-shaped image, like barcode technology, that is readable by a device like a smartphone. But it also will be a paper copy that you can use and verify. And I'll show you a picture in a minute. There will be a transition period, as I mentioned, until September 27th for vaccinated people to obtain their BC vaccine card. During this time, your paper record that you got at your immunization clinic will still be able to be used. So here's how you do it. Starting today, and we started this morning with a soft launch, you take these steps. You can either go to gov.bc.ca/vaccine card, and you enter your personal health number, the date of birth, your date of birth, and the date of one of your vaccine doses. So that's the way we verify that you are who you are. Then you get your BC vaccine card. You can save it to your mobile device. You can save it to your computer. You can print it. You can save it by, as I learned this morning, pressing a screenshot and then swiping so that it goes into your pictures on your phone. And then you have your vaccine card ready to present when you go to one of these events or businesses that requires it. For those who have already signed on to the Health Gateway, you can actually get it very easily through the Health Gateway as well. But you don't need to sign on to the Health Gateway to be able to get your card very simply by going to this website on your phone. So this is what it looks like. It'll come up on your phone that you've either received both doses of a 2-dose vaccine series or 1 dose of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine series, that you're partially vaccinated, or that there's no record. So what you'll see is a very minimum information with a QR code and your name. And those are the important pieces of information that allows a business to verify whether you've been vaccinated or not. It's important that the website can be used to print your BC vaccine card by following the same steps and then printing from a computer or a phone. And we know that many people aren't so tech savvy with the phone, so there are other ways you can do it. You can do it on a computer. You can ask a friend or family member, and we really encourage people to do that, to assist you to print your BC vaccine card. For those who don't have access to a computer or a smartphone, you can call our provincial vaccine line at 1-833-838-2323, and we will help walk you through it and send you a printed card in the mail. Or you can visit one of the 64 Service BC centres around British Columbia who can also print your card for you. I do want to say, though, we know there'll be some people who have challenges with this, and to be patient in the first few days. This service will be available over the next number of weeks. We have a period of time where we're transitioning in, where you can still use your vaccine card that you received when you received your immunization. But there are many different ways that you can get this card. You do not have to download an app onto your phone to get your personal BC vaccine card. And then when you arrive at a business that requires proof of vaccination, you have either your digital or your paper copy ready, and you'll be asked to display it, and with a piece of valid government ID that just confirms that that's the same person, that you are the person for whom that vaccine information applies to. We're not going to be requiring government information ID for those 12 to 18, as we know that can be a challenge for people to have that. So for young people, 12 to 18, you'll just need to show your proof of vaccination. Families and caregivers or friends, you can download, or grandparents, you can download others' copies on your phone with you, or you can have multiple paper copies on your mobile device or by paper. For a business perspective, for verifying a BC vaccine card, you have 2 options, and these 2 options will be the same throughout the process where we have this temporary measure in place. Option 1 is you can download an app that will allow you to scan the QR code. And really importantly, this BC verification app, and I'll talk a bit more about it, allows you to scan but doesn't collect or store any information. Or you can continue to verify it visually by looking at what is on the paper copy. So the BC Vaccine Card Verifier app will be ready starting next week, and it'll be downloadable from Google or from the App Store. And you will be able to verify vaccination status using this app and then look at the person's ID to make sure that they are the person whose card you've scanned. The app only reads the COVID-19 vaccination information. No additional health information is stored on the app or on a smartphone that somebody uses to scan. And it's available, as I mentioned, for Apple or Android devices starting on September 13th. So this is kind of what it looks like. One, you download the app onto your phone and you allow access to the camera. Then you use that to either scan the paper copy or the phone copy that somebody has when they come into your business, your restaurant, and it tells you the step 3 there on the right. What it'll come up with is a green sign that says vaccinated, a blue sign that says partially vaccinated, or no record found. So it's very simple, and then you can go on and scan the next one. So businesses, as I mentioned, can also visually verify either the digital paper or digital or paper copy of the BC vaccine card, like checking proof of age for alcohol sales. You can look at it directly and confirm that it is the person. And for people, as I mentioned, age 19 and above, you'll have to have a government-issued ID to verify that you are the person associated with that QR code. As I mentioned, we will be transitioning over the period of the next 3 weeks up until September 26. You can still use your paper record, but these paper records, we know, have more information on them that's visible to people. As well, the QR code is more secure because it's directly related to the information that's stored in our immunization registry. So starting September 27th, the BC vaccine card will be the only accepted form of proof. And businesses, however, will still have the option of viewing or scanning the paper or digital BC vaccine card. I know that this is a challenge for all of us right now. Everything new means that there's new things we have to try out. We need to work out the kinks. We've been working with a number of business organizations in the past couple of weeks to put this in place to make it as simple as possible. We have information for businesses, including step-by-step instructions. That's found on the gov.bc.ca website at vaccinecard-businesses. And we encourage businesses to reach out to their associations and to go online to get more information. As well, we'll be launching an information call line for businesses specifically starting next week, where we'll be able to take information and share it on the website, the questions, the issues that are coming up, the best practices that people are using. So that is part of our commitment to engage with businesses as we go through this in the next week and as we roll this out over the next few months. One of the things that we have been most concerned about as we were developing the concept around this is privacy and security. So the BC vaccine card is designed using the global Smart Health Card framework, which is internationally recognized criteria for ensuring privacy and security. It uses these QR codes to keep a copy of your record on hand, and you have the option of sharing that information with people. We are requiring businesses to use the BC app, which has very limited information, so it only comes up with a report that tells you whether you're vaccinated or not, so the business knows. There's no downloading of information, and very importantly, there's no connection to other health information that you might have. This type of technology is being widely used for proof of COVID vaccinations, very similar to Quebec and other places are using as well. And it's a framework that other provinces and territories will be building on, and that we're working with the federal government to make sure that this is the card that you will use eventually when the federal app for international travel becomes more available. So it will be interoperable with that. We'll be able to access your QR code with the needed information that you'll need to travel internationally once that's in place. So these standards, as I mentioned, store only the absolute minimum information and are not connected to any other health records. But you still need to keep them secure as you would a copy of your vaccine card that has your information on them. So don't post your own QR code on social media. If somebody does try to use it, though, it does have your name on it. So again, that's why we need a verification with a form of identification. We know as well that our immunization registry, that we delivered over 7.5 million doses of vaccine, that there are some people whose doses may not be or entered correctly, or they may be missing one of their doses. And so if there is a problem with your immunization record as you're going to try and get your BC vaccine card, you can update it on the website as well, immunizationrecord.gov.bc.ca. This also is for people who are returning to BC, who are students, who have been vaccinated, people who have been vaccinated outside of BC. You can go to this and update and submit your immunization records, and that will enable you to get your BC vaccine card. Submitting this information is very simple. It takes less than 5 minutes, and we will be adding that into the immunization registry so that you can access your vaccine card as soon as possible. Realistically, if we get a large number of people who are doing this, it may take several days before that can happen, as much as 4 to 7 days. And that's why one of the reasons we have a grace period over the next few months. As well, people who are out of province, we have ways to ensure that we can accept their proof of vaccination, especially from other Canadian provinces and territories. You have to show your provincial or territorial officially recognized vaccine record, and we'll have copies of those available for businesses on the business website so they know what they're looking for, as well as corresponding government photo ID. And the same goes for people in the Canadian Armed Forces who are immunized through their workplace. They can show their military ID and their vaccine card. And for international visitors, all of them have to have a proof of immunization on the ArriveCan app, and they can use that with their passport as a way of showing that they are also immunized. So we've tried to make this as simple and as practical as possible, to make it as easy as possible for those of us who are immunized to obtain the record, and for businesses to be able to efficiently scan them. As you know, provincial health officer orders are still in place, and these will supplement what we need to do right now as we're moving forward with the BC vaccine card. That means masks will continue to be required in indoor public places for people 12 and up, as they have been. That's that added layer of protection that we need right now with the transmission that we're seeing. As well, we still have capacity limits that are in place under the events and gatherings order, and that means 50 people or 50% capacity, whichever is greater. But what we hope as we move through this next few months with the BC vaccine card is that once it is only immunized people who are at these discretionary events, these social events, these businesses, will be able to remove those capacity limits, because we know that we've mitigated the risk so much of transmission because people are protected in those settings through immunization. I will say as well that all PHO orders are enforceable, and that fines can be issued under the orders that we have in place now. And they can be issued by a number of different officials, whether it's the Community Safety Unit, our liquor and cannabis inspectors, environmental health officers, gaming investigators, conservation officers, and of course, public safety officers or police officers. Obviously, the first the first line of defense is not to call the police, and the police are there to support us, to support businesses, should somebody be disturbing the peace. And we have seen that in a few occasions, but we know that that is rare. And this really is about the ability for us to continue to come together and do these discretionary, important social events, arts events, sports events together in a way that keeps each other safe. So as I mentioned, these are time limited. And the timing may change depending on how we progress, but we are hopeful that we'll be able to remove some of the restrictions and we'll take away that risk of having to shut down or close events or businesses like we had to do last year as transmission increased through the fall. So the BC vaccine card, as I said, is another layer of protection, but it's not the only layer. Masks continue to be required. And of course, it goes without saying that all of those important things that we do, staying away if we're not feeling well ourselves, getting tested, washing hands, all of the things that we've now learned as part of our day-to-day life getting through this pandemic are going to be continuing important. But the vaccine card gives us is an alternative to more restrictive measures in many events and businesses and social situations. It gives us that opportunity to do things in a way that is far closer to what existed before the COVID-19 pandemic. I understand that people are tired and frustrated with COVID-19 and that we are concerned about what lies ahead and what might happen next. Right now, we need to focus on getting through this next phase, and let's get angry at this virus, not at each other. And let's continue to support each other, whether that's supporting your local arts organization, your sports club, your local restaurant, whether you're vaccinated, doing that in person, or continuing to support them by watching online, by doing takeout from your local restaurant. We will get through this. We will get through this. This is another tool that we have. We know that these vaccines are very effective and they're protecting people. They're protecting people from hospitalization and severe illness, and it's protecting our healthcare system. And we know that these are the tools that allow us to continue to come together and to have those interactions, to have those businesses, to have those events that we need in our lives. So I encourage everybody to download their vaccine card over the next few days. And we will be supporting businesses and working with you as we go through this next few months to get this implemented. We will get through this, and we'll do that together by doing what we have been doing all along here in BC. That's supporting each other and doing it with kindness and with compassion. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier Horgan. Dr. Henry, today in British Columbia, and it's a significant thing, 7,545,871 doses of COVID-19 vaccine have been administered all over our province. That 85.1% of people have received their first dose, that 77.6% of people have received their second dose. And indeed, in the period since we started, since we announced the BC vaccine card was coming, what we've seen is a significant increase in registrations. And I want to note who's been leading the way. Leading the way are those aged 18 to 24, 85.5% of whom have been vaccinated, their first dose immunization, and still this weekend again, leading in registrations, leading in new bookings. That number will go up. This level of confidence that more than 17 out of every 20 people have been immunized is a reflection of the extraordinary work and the experience of immunization by our talented teams at clinics everywhere in BC, by healthcare workers, by doctors, by nurses, by pharmacists, by the entire healthcare team. The performance has been excellent. It's been done with generosity and safety, and I hear every day from people who are, in some cases, worried about the experience. No one likes to get a shot in general, and who have found the experience to be immeasurably positive in their lives, and the experience of going to an immunization clinic positive. And I want to encourage everybody today, everybody, to join all of those people, to join that 85.1% and get vaccinated against COVID-19. Dr. Henry stated the numbers pretty clearly. 12 times more likely to test positive for COVID-19 if you're unvaccinated. 34 times more likely, 34, to go to hospital. And when you consider what it takes to go to hospital and the significance of that, both for our healthcare system, but for you as an individual, I think the case is so profoundly strong right now, if you haven't been vaccinated, to get vaccinated, to book, to register your appointment to go get vaccinated or drop in at our many drop-in opportunities. This week, focusing on young people, 12 to 17, 18 to 30, we're going to continue in working with school districts and working with our post-secondary sector to see there are more and more opportunities, particularly for young people to get vaccinated in this time. But if you're one of the more than 140,000 people over 60 who have not yet been vaccinated, this is an important time as well, because your level of risk should drive you to make that decision. The BC vaccine card builds on the confidence that this vaccination campaign has shown, that confidence that says that in our pandemic we are making the right choice by getting vaccinated, that we're making the best choices, and that right now, especially with the surge in cases and in hospitalizations we've seen primarily in groups of unvaccinated people, we're doing exactly what's required to save lives and to save people's long-term health. I think it's important to recognize that after all we've been through in the last many months, including launching the most remarkable and effective vaccination effort our province has ever seen, getting the BC vaccine card is straightforward. Dr. Henry took you through that just a few minutes ago. First, and this is the most important part, get vaccinated. Second, visit gov.bc.ca/vaccine card and download or print a copy of our BC vaccine card and store it on our phone or print a paper copy. Now, for any reason, not able to access the online website to download or print a card, we can still get our BC vaccine card. We can call 1-833-838-2323 to get a copy of our card mailed to us. We can ask a family member or a trusted friend or support person to print our card for us, or we can visit a Service BC center around BC to get one. And let's remember, all of us, to reach out and help those we know might need our help in getting their BC vaccine card. The BC's vaccine card is a critical new initiative at a key moment in our BC pandemic, and getting it is a step that we're all taking together, one that will see us continue to adapt to make sure that we're not just able to get the card, but the businesses can use it to its full potential, to give us all additional confidence that when we're participating in events and activities, those around us are fully vaccinated as well. The pandemic has taken a heavy toll on all of us. Some, of course, more than others. The road back continues to be long and challenging. The BC vaccine card is a welcome milestone on the way, showing how far we've come and just as important that we are all coming back together. Remember, today, if you haven't been vaccinated, get vaccinated. Premier?
Welcome back, everyone. We're here today speaking with Felix Colling about why he's running for the Green Party and what the Green Party actually stands for. So we're going to ask him some really basic questions about the Green Party platform, and then we want to bring it home because, hey, a lot of us listening are here in Surrey, BC, and our office and studio is in Surrey, BC, and that's where Felix is running in Surrey Centre. So we want to ask him some questions about what's going on in Surrey that is driving him to run for office. So, Felix, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Mike. Thank you so much.
So, let's start with our first question. What would a green economy mean to Canada, and what would it mean for BC?
Well, a green economy would mean that actually that we are returning back to an economy which is way much more sustainable and way much more helpful and supporting the environment and the climate which we live in. Because one thing that I believe is there is no plan B. So we need to return back to an economy where big companies are not receiving subsidies from the government for the past 50 years and actually investing in a much more sustainable generation that will be able to fund critical investment in our society to make us much more better, much more healthier, and way much more sustainable, and ensuring that we leave the next generation with less damage than what we have right now. So that is kind of the way I look at it, and that is what actually drove me and interested me, put me in a place where I felt like it was necessary for me to be out there and to be that voice where I will be working towards ensuring that we are transitioning to a zero carbon economy.
I like that. You said something way different than what the liberals and conservatives have said, in the fact that you said zero carbon economy or zero carbon society rather than net zero. It would seem to be a big difference between the two.
Yes, exactly, because we are mostly looking especially at renewables and an energy efficiency economy whereby we are able to kind of sustain whatever we put out there, and we will be in a situation where we can definitely control our carbon emissions. This is definitely something that I feel very passionate about, and I want that to be something out there that people can see that there is a big difference between the Greens and the NDP, the Liberals, or the Conservatives. The Green is the only party with a plan to address climate change and our environmental crisis.
Right. So the Green Party intends to go beyond the what is it? Justin Trudeau said 45% cut in emissions by 2030, and then he said net zero by 2050. So the Green Party intends to go faster and reduce emissions even further than net zero.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So the other big issue, and I know the Greens have wanted to address this, was affordable housing.
Yes. The issue of affordable housing, more specifically, as you've pointed out, it's a serious issue. I mean, the question people should ask themselves when it comes to housing, more specifically coming back down to the riding, is you guys as voters, as myself, we've all made that mistake. We voted for the NDP, we voted for the Liberals, we voted for the Conservatives who have run this riding for years. Mm-hmm. What has actually changed? Nothing has actually changed. I have friends who have moved out of the area, and some of them are not coming back. Even young families which are in this area are unable to afford housing. So this is one thing that the Greens would do. The Greens would ensure that actually that renters, the Greens will ensure that the Canadian Mortgage Corporation development would definitely refocus its purpose on co-op housing, because we think that actually we need to come down to the basics and work with co-ops and non-profit organizations in the area so we can increase the housing stock. This whole crisis was created so many years ago. If you go back to when it was all slashed together with healthcare, the Liberals definitely created some of these problems. And the other leaders that we've had here in the past, consequently, the NDP that lastly ruled here, which were leading the riding, they did nothing about it. So we have been in this continuous cycle for so long that these three parties have been exchanging themselves in the riding and practically doing nothing. So when I am elected, if I go out there to Ottawa, I will ensure that actually we have more rental units in the area. I will ensure that we have much more collaboration and cooperation together, even with the local municipal governments, to ensure that we can do something about it. The Green Party is looking at supporting the municipality, putting more money, creating more funds, delivering more funds to the hands of the municipalities to ensure that actually we can build more housing stocks here. Right now, what we are seeing is the hands of our municipalities are kind of tied up. But this is something that I'm going to work, if elected in Ottawa, to make sure that we can direct those funds here, ensure that we can build much more housing, much more affordable housing, more specifically working with our local partners here and even incentivizing, because we need to incentivize. It's very important that we have systems in place where developers who are interested in building affordable housing can be way much more faster. We could support them with several incentives. It can be tax incentives or whatever measure that we can take to ensure that actually there is something in place. Right now in Surrey Center, you have the high rises going up. I bet you if you go in there and count, you will find very few of them which are even affordable for people who want to rent.
Yeah, the average rent here in Surrey, BC, for a 1-bedroom apartment or a 1-bedroom suite is about $1,500 a month, and that 1-bedroom suite isn't going to support a young family. So,
yes,
we have our 25 to 30-year-olds who are starting a family. There's no way that they could possibly afford to pay close to $3,000 a month in rent to have an appropriate size apartment to house them plus their children, right?
Yes, absolutely, Mike. I mean, that's why I said, like, lately I was just speaking to a family the other day when I was out there conversing, and people are just suffering. It's very, very hard for families. I mean, it was so sad for me to see some of my friends move away. And these are friends who were born here in this community. They were born here in Surrey Central. But what they're telling me is there is no way for some of them to survive. It's just very, very difficult for people to, cramp themselves up in really small units. And before you look at how much the wages that people are suffering with, other things with spiking groceries. There's a lot of different problems here. The Greens think that housing is a human right. And that is something that if we could collaborate with the local partners who are here, with municipalities, with the government, to make sure it is affordable, that people can rent and even provide incentives, provide subsidies to renters. That is how far we are able to go with this. We are really, really here to support people in this community. And our mandate, the mandate of all Greens, is to their constituents. This is something people have to put in mind. The Greens don't whip votes. The Greens, if you vote for the Greens, we represent your interests here in the community. This is something that I don't understand why people don't get that message. So don't think that if you vote for a Green, the Greens are not just like the Liberals, they're not just like the Conservatives that with their votes. The Greens, if you vote for the Greens, I am going to be out there representing your interests, fighting for your interests, bringing back those jobs here to this community, bringing back those affordable housing to this community, which we've been asking for decades.
Yeah. So we talked about affordable housing, and we talked about, of course, the green economy. What other issues are near and dear to your heart that exist here in your riding, Surrey Center, that you want to see corrected, that are going to be correctable by the federal government?
Well, I do think that Surrey is not getting its fair share, given the growth of the area. Surrey is much more growing than Vancouver or other cities nearby. I also see that actually that Surrey needs some support with the opioid crisis. This is something we cannot actually ignore. It's been here for a very, very long time. And one thing I would really work on is to ensure that it is decriminalized, to ensure that we work with our local partners here to get more institutions where people can go there and get, safe support, safe medication, mental health facilities are built. We have much more support. That funding, which is supposed to be for service providers in the areas who are working with those who are suffering with the opioid crisis, get enough funding as compared to right now that the funding is going elsewhere. It's not coming to the service providers. So we see the kind of cycle that keeps repeating itself. And this has been going on for so long. So what I will ensure is I would listen to the local partners who are here. I would work with them collaboratively and ensure that actually that fund is delivered to those service providers who are here supporting those individuals, because it is high time we start taking care of them. It's high time we decriminalize, provide a comprehensive program that is focused on those individuals who are here in Surrey Center. And that is what I will work day and night to ensure that we get that fixed, because I myself have been a service provider here. I've worked with youth, I've worked with children, I've worked with persons with disability, I've worked with some of those organizations here. Right now, it looks like nobody is listening to them. We have to bring it back down to the grassroots, work with those organizations, and ensure that actually that crisis is actually addressed in a comprehensive manner.
So, you said you were a local service provider.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you this. Do you, as a local service provider, did you see the same faces appearing over and over again until they simply just disappeared?
Yes, exactly. And the most sad thing about that is we struggle at times as service providers because, the fund is actually, there ought to be something, there ought to be an established framework which we can use nationally to address this problem. But coming down to the basics, we need to have something which is comprehensive and addressing the needs of Surrey. And one thing I've seen it, working in the past with some of these individuals is they have a very short lifespan as compared to most of us. They struggle, they just go around, and it's always just like the same thing. And also service providers are actually suffering because there is not enough support, there is not enough funding to build some of the homes that can accommodate them. And without a national strategy on this opioid crisis, we would always have the challenge that, it will be almost impossible. It will just be a revolving cycle that people keep going through the same trouble all the time. But absolutely, I've seen faces that have just been coming through our doors, but sometimes, some of them disappear because they've been struggling here for a long time, and some people move to other provinces and some move to the island and other places.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say maybe we should define disappear to people. More than likely, they've overdosed and passed on or dead.
Yes.
Not that I'm sure you had some success stories, right?
Yes, exactly. I mean, we've had stories where, we've had successes with individuals that actually were able to kind of really change their lives. Like, for example, I had a girl who did her practicum in my office for a very, very long time. And now she's studying at Langara, and she's doing very, very, very well. And she's even there right now working at Rain Housing, another housing institution that is helping youths who are going through those crises. Right now, she's a support worker that's studying to get a diploma at Langara. So these are instances where people have kind of like came out of that cycle. It's not as if they can't come out of it, but in the present climate, some of them just need to need more support, and service providers need to be supported as well, because not all the cases are the same, but we need to be given the tools, we need to be given that funding which is going to provide us with the support that we need in order to develop programs that would, ensure that most of those people are transitioning and really reintegrating themselves into the society, like like employment programs and all of that sort, which right now is really difficult. Service providers struggle a lot just to even get funding for some of these programs to be done. At times we did fundraising events and all that, but it's still very, very challenging. And now with COVID, it just makes it even harder. I cannot imagine how some of them are even surviving and opening their doors.
Yeah, I remember listening to Anime Paul, and she she said that these people are being poisoned because of limited supplies and things like that due to COVID. That they're literally these illegal drug suppliers are poisoning people with what they're putting into it, because these people they're just desperate to kill whatever pain, whatever it is that they're trying to avoid, mental health issues, whatever it is, right?
Yes, yes, yes. It is. It is very bad now because because we don't have specific sites where they could go and get the drugs in a safe manner, controlled. Now they are running into dealers who kind of actually poison them and produce. Like we even saw a case where some facilities were discovered by the RCMP in Richmond and other parts of the province. So this is really something that this is an emergency. This is a serious crisis. And you see that right through once you walk down to Surrey Central. It's there. Yeah. It's something that I can't take my eyes off it. And I think this is something that I will be working day and night to ensure that we do something about it, not just speak about it like the other parties have been doing for a long time.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Felix, for your time today, and good luck with the election. Please, everybody, it doesn't matter if you vote for Felix or you vote for the Green Party or if you vote for someone else. Just make sure you get out there and vote. September 20th, right, Felix?
Yes, exactly. I mean, just go out there and vote.
Yeah, that's the whole backbone of our society and of our country, is that we have the ability to go out there and vote. So please do so. Again, Felix, thank you for joining us, and thank you for bringing to light the mental health issues that are behind addiction and the need to actually do something concrete to curb this. So
thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you so much, Mike. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, we'll talk to everybody later. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to us today. We hope that we have provided enough food for thought, enough information for decisions, and we hope that you will go out and cast your vote for the person, the people that will support our lives the best. You've been listening to Policy and Rights here on Depictions Media, and I am still your host, Michael Clocks. Thank you for listening today, and thank you for supporting us with our sponsors. Please go to depictions.media for more information, and click on our contact link and let us know how we can help bring your story and help bring us to a better world. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.